So let's move on to another of these beliefs. Hypnosis can uncover lost memories. And we've all seen the films, the TV dramas, where the police can't solve the crime. They desperately need the only witness to remember something, and they can't remember it. So they call in the hypnotist, who regresses this person, puts them back to the moment, and they remember it was a green car. Its registration plate was YC5, and so on. And they go out and they solve the crime. That person, their memory had laid down like a videotape in their head. They just couldn't access it until the hypnotist enabled them to do so. And here's a web page that I got. There's the URL that was accurate when I got it. And it explains about how hypnosis can help human memory. Even in a tranquil environment, it says, we're bombarded by 60,000 stimuli a second. A second, 60,000. Every second of every minute of every hour of every day, the barrage continues unrelentingly. And the biggest barrier to recalling information or memories is stress. Stress is the static or white noise of the mind that makes recall difficult or impossible. So, if you were engaging your critical faculties when reading this, it's all written in nice prose, it's got notes in. But you could say 60,000 a second? How are they measuring that? What are they talking about? Pixels? Tones? What's a stimulus? 60,000 every second? Multiply that up. And it's not surprising that we can't recall everything. Can you recall 60,000 things that you learned yesterday? And that was only 1 second. No. So maybe hypnotism can help. Since the mind, operating in its conscious mode, can only store 4 to 7 clusters of information at a time, does that sound familiar to you, anybody? That number, someone says yes, yes?
Yes, it's like Miller's magic number.
Magic number, that's right. 4 to 7, Miller's magic number. What it's actually referring to is the span of short-term memory. If someone reels off a sequence of digits to you, most people can recall about 7 before they start to misplace them or forget them. 4 to 7 is the span of short-term memory. So they're now saying, that's a fact. It's like that foot in the door technique we saw with the hard disk drive. That you know this, it's familiar to you, it's out there in popular culture, you read that, you accept what comes next. It falls to the mind in its subconscious mode to store each and every one of them permanently. So we have a conscious mind that can only recall a bit, and a subconscious mind that can do everything. Good old subconscious mind. Why don't we swap them over? Surely it would be better for passing exams and so on. Anyway, this process begins en utero, Latin, when the fetus is about 14 weeks old and continues until death. Okay, I agree with the last part. After you're dead, you stop perceiving things, and it's difficult to get dead people to remember anything. But the first bit, it starts in utero, when the fetus is 14 weeks old, about 14 weeks old. It sounds nice, it's got Latin, it's about 14 weeks, might be 13 to 15, but how did they do that test with these 14-week-old fetuses? Okay, you can give them stimuli, how did you test them? And how did you test them consciously and subconsciously? I just don't believe that they've got any evidence for this, so they must be making this up. And if you think about it, where could they get the evidence from? You start to think, is this real? All memories are permanent and can be recalled whenever needed. Well, that's the nub of the hypnosis argument, that our brains are subconsciously writing down all of these 60,000 stimuli every second, every minute of every hour of every day. And if only we could rewind the tape, we could get them back. Well, what's the evidence? 80% of people accepted this, said yes or maybe yes to it, out of my nearly 2,000. But in 2003, Kilstrom published a chapter in a book called Learning and Memory. He was actually tasked to review all the literature and to come to an educated conclusion about this, because hypnosis is being sort of promoted as something that could be used in courts and as legal evidence. And this was his conclusion, after reviewing all of the studies and all of the evidence, that while subjects who receive suggestions for performance enhancements often have the impression that their performance has in fact improved, this impression appears to be illusory. And that's how hypnosis works. It makes you think you're doing well at these tests, but it doesn't actually improve your performance. So what it does increase is the number of false recollections or illusory memories. That's what it appears to increase. And if you give people recognition tests where you know what they were presented with, and then sometime later you ask them to recognise which of these were you presented with, it increases the frequency of false alarms, i.e. people choosing the wrong item, and confidence levels. So they will definitely say, yes, that was the one, I'm certain, and it was not. And due to its very nature, it makes people accept what they're being told. Due to the increased suggestibility, hypnotised subjects may be more vulnerable to post-event misinformation events. Now this is where you can give people a leading question that they will say yes to or no to because of the phrasing of the question. They will then be entirely confident in their answer. They will remember giving that answer and believe that they gave that answer because they had remembered, even though you had just led them to say that. So again, a quote. It seems likely that the suggested atmosphere of hypnosis interacts with the reconstructive nature of memory retrieval to create or enhance an illusion of remembering, not real remembering. So while people will say, yes, I remember it was a green car, why see something? That has little connection with what colour the car was or what the number plate really was, but they will be sure that that's what it was. And in fact, in the US, hypnotically refreshed testimony is not actually legally admissible in courts because it's regarded as unreliable. And in the UK, the Crown prosecution web pages, they accept, yeah, sometimes the police will arrange for a witness to be hypnotised, almost as a sort of last resort. But information obtained under hypnosis should always be treated with great caution. There's a strong likelihood that evidence obtained under hypnosis will be unreliable and inadmissible in criminal proceedings. And a person who's been hypnotised should only be called as a witness in exceptional circumstances. And in fact, they go on to explain why, and they say exactly what Kilstrom had said. They're basing their findings on his work here, that a person under hypnosis may be subjected to cueing, those leading questions, and during hypnosis these fantasies can become fixed as facts in the mind of the subject, and there's no reliable means of guarding against this. Any confession obtained by hypnosis is likely to be ruled inadmissible, and under no circumstances should anyone who might be implicated in the commission of an offence be hypnotised. You should never hypnotise the suspect, because you might make them think they did it, and then they'll confess, and then you're in a complete mind.